Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. So I'm Veronica Flaspoehler, and I'm the president of Carolina Alumni, formerly known as the General Alumni Association. And this is a program that the Alumni Association has been doing for over 40 years. It started in the spring of 1982, so we'll hope you enjoy it. It's taken on a couple of different formats in the past, and this is a format that will allow you to be involved and ask questions if you wish towards the end. And hopefully, as we go through these questions, you'll have an opportunity to also reflect on your time here in Chapel Hill 50 years ago. So we're actually going to get started with our alumni and have them introduce themselves, and then we'll have our students introduce themselves. So for the alumni, if you could share your name and where you've been since graduation and what you've been doing. And if we want to start here with Timothy.
Oh, great. Well, my name's Tim Lamb. I'm from Thomasville, North Carolina. Historically, we were known for manufacturing Thomasville furniture. I grew up in a very small rural area of Davidson County. Went to a school that only had 400 people in the whole school. I was one of the only ones to go to Carolina from the class of 70. I still live in, I'm retired and live in Thomasville. Wouldn't give anything for my cherished years here at the Hill. It just makes me feel so old looking down at those young people, and to think that we once looked like that as well. So that's pretty much. I've had careers in clothing, selling men's clothing. Currently have a part-time position at Lowe's Home Improvement just to get out of the house and keep my mind active. And then for many years, I also started out at the Davidson County Health Department. So that's pretty much what I've done. Next.
I'm next. I usually say to everyone, I don't need a microphone because I got a cafeteria voice. I was an educator. I've been retired now for 14 years thanks to my husband there, Mickey, who also was a graduate, a student here at Carolina, and he played on the baseball team. He was the first African American. We have been living in Charlotte now for the last 14 years, and I'm from Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Some of my friends are here from my class of 1970 at Rocky Mount Senior High School. So it's like, when are we gonna stop celebrating the 50th every year or whatever? As far as my career, I was an educator in Nash County for many, many years at Nash Central Junior High, and I found out that Nash Central Middle School, and one of our young participants, also went to school there. My sister still lives there. We travel back from Charlotte to Rocky Mount. It's 4.5 hours. It's a long, straight shot, but it's a long shot. As far as what we're doing in Rocky Mount, Charlotte, we are retired. We're enjoying. We don't have any grandchildren or anything, so therefore we're able to do a few things that other people can't do, which is one of them to be here today.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Warren Carson. I'm from Tryon, North Carolina. That's in the western part of the state. That's where I was born, but I also spent quite a lot of time in Avery County, North Carolina. It's farther up the mountain with my maternal grandmother and great-grandmother, close to the Boone area, where I still have lots and lots of relatives. I retired from the University of South Carolina system. I taught English for about 42 and a half years, and was also an administrator. I retired as the senior associate provost for academic affairs, and I like being able to do whatever I want to do, which is a lot of times nothing. At least I have that leisure. I've always been an avid reader, so I set a goal some years ago to read a book a week, but I can feel myself slowing down now. I've had the same book for about a month, and I'm only about 2 or 3 pages in. So anyway, It's always a delight to be back in Chapel Hill. I have many memories of great friends and wonderful times, and some not so wonderful times, but it all worked together to make for a really great experience.
Thank you.
I'm Martha Ann Moser. I'm from Winston-Salem, and when I got to Chapel Hill, they put us all in Spencer dorm and tried to lock us up, but we got out anyway. And there were telephones downstairs. If you had a blind date, they would call you up to the room, and you could send a friend down to look them over and decide whether you were really going to show up. But anyway, I went to Reynolds High School, then Chapel Hill for 4 years, Northwestern for my MBA, and I had a varied financial career with RJR Tobacco, then RJR Nabisco, and followed them to Atlanta with the leverage, and where the leverage buyout ended all that. And then I worked for Bell South International for a while, and then as the controller of Emory University. So, varied career. 2 boys, proud to say they're both Tar Heels. They both got in from out of state, and that's when I moved back to Winston-Salem.
It's just a lot of fun. My name is Susie Gooden-Prevette. For 40 years, I was Susan Prevette when I was working, but now that I've retired to my hometown, I'm Susie again. I grew up in a little town in southeastern North Carolina called Elizabethtown. Went to Peace College, at that time an all-woman school, and when I transferred to Carolina as a junior, they put me in Ehringhaus. What a shock. The football team was at Ehringhaus. So anyway, they were, I can remember in the snack bar, this guy said, is that little Prevette dude coming up here this weekend? So anyway, I had a big time, ran student legislature, loved the opportunity to find out who I was, because in Elizabethtown, everybody knew me and my parents. Yeah, I couldn't get in trouble because everybody stopped me. So I still got in trouble, my
Good.
I graduated in political science with the intention of going to law school, did not, ended up getting a master's degree in English, worked as a technical writer. Well, I taught at East Carolina for 3 years, then worked as a technical writer for Burroughs Wellcome Pharmaceuticals, then decided wanted to make a little more money, went to work for RJR in Winston-Salem, loved Winston-Salem, great artsy town. Eventually left there and went into banking as vice president of documentation and training for what was then Central Carolina Bank. Eventually transferred back to Elizabethtown and retired from BB&T, who bought the bank I was in at that time. In retirement, I've continued to have a ball. I come up for a lot for athletic events, and not just football and baseball, or not just football and basketball, but women's basketball and baseball and soccer and volleyball and everything. Tennis, beautiful tennis center here. And Carolina Performing Arts. We have a new wonderful director of Carolina Performing Arts, and I've had a chance to get to know her, and I come back as often as I can. It's a magical place, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. And for our students, as you introduce yourself, I will not be that person that asks you what you're doing after college, I promise. But if you could share your name and where you went to high school, your major, and maybe one fun fact about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Merritt Haney. I am from Raleigh, but very North Raleigh, closer to Wake Forest. I went to a small charter school called Franklin Academy, only about 120 people in each graduating class. So I'm the only girl from my high school or from my graduating class to go to Carolina. So that was definitely different, you know, coming from a school where I knew everyone to a school I knew no one. I'm a business major, so up at Keenan Flagler, and then I'm also a psychology major, so I get to be on both campuses, which is nice. And then something kind of fun is 2 years ago through Carolina, I got scuba certified. So now I occasionally go scuba diving, and my favorite dive was actually this year. I went to Honduras, and they have the second largest barrier reef behind the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, and that was a really cool experience. But, yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Andrew Spratley. I'm originally from New Bern, North Carolina, and I went to New Bern High for 2 years, and then I ended up going to the School of Science and Math in Durham for my last two. And I ended up doing research at Duke my senior year, and so that's what drove me 8 miles south. I'm a double major in environmental science and public policy. I have a minor in physics. So I'm actually going to law school next year, so I'll let that be my fun fact. So.
Hi, everybody. My name is Zachary Richardson. I'm from Rocky Mount, North Carolina. I'm the one that went to what is now known as Nash Central Middle School. But I went to Nash Central High School for 2 years before also ending up at the School of Science and Math with Andrew. I am a biology major with statistics and data science minors, and I focus a lot more in that area than I do biology. And my fun fact would be that I've been on the water polo club team here at UNC for 3 years, and I never played that before getting to college, but it's been fun, and it's definitely been a very big challenge, but something I really enjoyed.
Hello, my name is Phil. I am born and raised in Burlington, North Carolina. So I went to Williams High School, so not too far from here, like 40 minutes west of Chapel Hill. I am studying health policy and management in the School of Public Health, and I plan to be a college advisor for a year after graduation, so that's going to be kind of fun. And I'm a first-gen college student, so first-gen to be in America, first-gen to be a college student at Carolina, and yeah, I'll let that be my fun fact.
Thank you. All right, so let's get started with our questions, and I think we'll start Susie, and we'll go this way, and we'll just switch it up with each question. So how did you get to Chapel Hill as a freshman? Who brought you, and what did you bring?
My father was a state graduate, a very proud state graduate, who was there when Everett Case was there, who started the ACC, who built Reynolds Coliseum, which at that time was the largest coliseum for miles and miles and miles, of where they had the ACC tournament every year. And in the pictures, you can see all the people smoking in Reynolds Coliseum. Yes, that was the Reynolds family that donated that. And so when I decided, I'd also gone to those tournaments with him, but I just wanted to come to Carolina. I also wanted to go to law school, I thought. So in order to convince him to let me come to Carolina, I applied to Cornell in New York State, to some school in France, to some weirdo school in Dayton where you go to school a semester and work a semester, and Carolina. And he said, go on to Carolina. So my parents brought me. They were very involved. When I graduated, Daddy said, you spent a remarkably low amount of money to get your education. Of course, I said, I could have spent more.
And what did you bring, Susie? Anything that stands out?
Yeah, I knew my roommate. She was from Peace. And so we had coordinated our clothing, and not our clothing. No, we didn't do that. We coordinated our room decor. And back then, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have cell phones. So it was pretty simple.
Yeah. Thank you. All
Same
right.
question?
Yes.
I don't remember it as very eventful. My parents brought me down. My father was also a Tar Heel. We were sort of provincial. I only applied to St. Mary's in Raleigh and Carolina, and y'all don't know me, but I am not a St. Mary's girl. So thank God I got in. And it was great, except they really did try to lock us up. They even had a cafeteria in Spencer so that we could, study and just eat dinner, in the dorm, but that didn't work very well either.
All right. Anything you remember specifically bringing?
No, we coordinated. I had a potluck roommate from Faison, North Carolina, which is from Mount Olive. It's near Mount Olive, and we coordinated who was going to bring a little refrigerator, and I can't remember if we had a TV, but all we had was a hall phone, and you didn't get to use it very often.
Thank you. Warren, how about you?
I was the first of a kind of a new generation in my family to come to school, so no one had been to college in 10 years. So it was a huge family affair. My mother, my younger brother, my aunt and my uncle from Durham, they all came. And it was such a long drive then, especially from Tryon to Chapel Hill. It was going to be an all-day affair for them. So I brought everything I thought I would need. Clothes galore, books, the dictionary, the thesaurus, a record player, a huge stack of LPs. I brought everything I thought I'd need. By the time they lugged it all up to the 4th floor of Mangum,
Oh, wow.
they were ready to eat and go back home. And they left me alone to explore the new universe.
Wonderful.
Well, how did I get to Carolina? I was a junior in high school, and I was in an immersion program at ECU for Spanish. And I had been there for about 6 weeks. We had to just eat, sleep, everything Spanish. And they were having a north-south football game, and football game. And I went into the dorm, to the cafeteria, and I met my husband, who's now my husband. So I was a junior, he had just graduated, and I was a rising senior. And that whole year, my girlfriend from Rocky Mount, Angela Bryant, was already at Carolina. So unbeknown to my parents, I applied to Carolina and to Bennett College on early admission. I got accepted to both, but you know where I went to Carolina. And that was because I was in love.
Still in love.
Still.
Yeah. But I brought a lot of good things with me to Carolina. That and my girlfriend, who's now one of my closest friends, Valerie Bass. She was my roommate. So we had coordinated things too, as far as what we would have in the room. And I bought a TV. She didn't like the TV, but that's okay. We got along. But that's the key. And then for one thing, I did not marry him until 20 years after graduating from Carolina. We split up that freshman year, my freshman year, Christmas time. I went home. I came back. I was ready to explore and get into other things. So when I came back, we said, we kind of separated and went our ways. I didn't see him for 20 years. And then neither one of us had been married or anything. So he found me at Valerie's house in Boston, and we got married 6 months later. I tried to stay in Nash County teaching. That did not work. That was before the cell phones. So, you know, that telephone bill and flying back and forth was very expensive. So he said, in January, he said, you got to give up NCAE and all that kind of stuff and come on, let's go to Connecticut and get your certification so you can work there. And that's what happened.
Wow. That is amazing. Thank you for sharing.
I mean, really, I think I'm gonna cry.
One more antidote. He played baseball. I never saw him play a baseball game. And don't think he does not forget it.
Well, that's a hard story to follow, Ida. But I grew up in, like I said, a small rural town, and my best friend at that time, he was already a freshman at Chapel Hill. And so also during those late 60s, Dean Smith won, the teams won 67, 68, 69, the ACC tournament, so they all went, so I became an avid basketball fan at that point. And so Carolina was the only place that I applied, having no idea what I was getting into. And so I was dropped off at Granville Towers West, and this was potluck. Unbeknownst to me, I landed on the 3rd floor where the Dean Smith's boys resided as well. And so for 4 years, I lived with the varsity basketball team and my other hall mates. And so you think we bleed Carolina blue now and cry when they lose. Back then, every loss was felt immensely because you didn't go to the NCAA tournament unless you won the ACC tournament. So there were only one year we went to the NCAA, and we went all the way to the Final Four in 1972. And another hallmate of mine and got us on the plane with the Rams Club. Was not a Rams clubber. I did not have the financial resources for that. But anyway, his dad was, and he got us on the chartered plane to go to L.A. And we stepped off the plane, and we were playing Florida State, and we immediately lost that night. So that was Lou Alcindor's senior year, I believe. And so they eventually, of course, that was one of the umpteen championships that UCLA won. But one little interesting story that I can anecdote, one year, I also had a little fridge in my room that everybody put their beer in. I was not a beer drinker, but I was the most popular guy in my suite. So one weekend I was visited by my dad and my mom and my little sister, Melinda, who was sitting on the back row back there. And she was about 10 that time, during that year, and maybe 12. Anyway, she has always been inquisitive, and so she went over and opened the fridge, and it was stacked with beer galore, every kind you had ever thought of. And my dad, who was a teetotaler, looked at that and he said, "We're going home right now, and I may speak to you next week." So I always blame my sister for exposing that part of my social. Not that I was a teetotaler. I mean, I enjoyed, the little mixers we had. Back then, they would put PJ. Anybody know what PJ was? And they mixed it in any container they could find, a garbage can, a bathtub. It didn't matter because you were pouring Everclear and high C grape juice and all sorts of fruit juices in there. So it's sort of, I guess, sanitized everything. I'm still living and haven't contracted any kind of social diseases that I know of. But that's kind of my experience.
Thank you. And I think they actually still do the PJ.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, at least 16 years ago, I can attest. But let's hear from our students and find out how things have changed. So how did you all get to Chapel Hill as freshmen, and who brought you, and what did you bring?
I can start. So as far as applying goes, I kind of always knew that I wanted to go to Carolina. I didn't have any extended family, or my parents didn't go here, but I grew up in Raleigh. I knew it was a good school, had good programs, had a good social scene. I don't know, seemed like the best fit. So I applied, I got in. A few months later, packed up my mom's Honda CRV, and we drove about 40 minutes to Chapel Hill, where I lived in Hinton James for 2 weeks before COVID sent us home. Packed the CRV up again, drove home, and then in January moved back to Hinton James, where I got to stay for the whole semester. But as far as things I brought, kind of similarly, I feel like all of the other females here, of course, I coordinated with my roommate. We had matching bedspreads and headboards and paintings and, different things along those lines. The mini fridge and microwave. No fridge of beer, but but yeah, no, I've loved Carolina, and the CRV is going to move me out tomorrow, so very full circle.
Well, after living in a dorm for 2 years, I kind of thought I had dorm life, figured out. And then, I ended up here just because, well, like Merritt, I had no affiliation to the school. My dad went to Auburn, my mom went to Alabama, so I grew up on SEC football, and I'll be honest, I didn't even really know what the ACC was. And then when I was applying to schools, I really wasn't. I applied to Carolina because all my friends were like, "Oh, look at Carolina, look at Carolina." I was like, "Well, it's just one of those state schools, isn't it?" And then you go online. Oh, it's got a world-renowned education. Oh, it's got a great sticker price on it too. And then applying, COVID hit and everything. I was like, well, I'll go to my cheapest option, and then it turned out to be my best option too. And so, moving in, it was very weird because we were still having to move in with masks, and that August humidity really was not a fun time to have those masks on. But, I moved in ready to kind of hunker down. I probably had too many things that were on the you shouldn't have this in your room list. So my roommate ended up staying home. So I was like, oh, well, I guess I've, got a nice little room to myself. So, but, they kicked us out 3 weeks later. And then, I, like Merritt, I moved back in January into an apartment. So, yeah.
So the application process for me was a little bit strange. I grew up a huge NC State fan. So I grew up hating Chapel Hill. I really did not like the sports team or the university at all. And I knew I wouldn't be going to UNC. So, but I applied anyways. I applied to UNC, a couple other schools. My main goal was to get to Duke University. Luckily, that did not work out. So then I was just trying to decide between going to school in Boston or coming to Chapel Hill, because I felt like Chapel Hill, even though I hated it, was probably a great school and a good option. I was supposed to fly to Boston to tour Northeastern University the day that we moved out of our boarding school because COVID hit. So I never actually got to go see the school. I think that was like a big blessing, because that caused me to end up going to Chapel Hill because I didn't feel super comfortable going away from home. And that was a great decision because I love Chapel Hill now. It took me a little while to get adjusted to watching them beat NC State. But now I'm happy to see it every time it happens. I moved in with my whole family, so my mom, my dad, my brother, my aunt, my grandparents all came because it was a big deal for us because I'm a first-gen college student. And I knew my roommate because we had gone to high school together, so we coordinated a little bit as far as like bringing fridge and microwave and things like that. But something that I guess was not mentioned by the alumni is I brought my cell phone, my laptop, my tablet. I brought a TV as well. I brought my gaming console, all of that. So I had a lot of electronics, but other than that, I was here for 2 weeks, like has been said, and then went home because of COVID again. And then I actually stayed home for the rest of the school year and didn't come back to Chapel Hill until my sophomore year. And so then I've been living and working in Granville Towers since then. But definitely great that I ended up at Chapel Hill.
Yeah, I think growing up, I really didn't have an affinity to Carolina. I mean, being born in North Carolina, being a first-gen college student, I, kind of picked the best school for me. I mean, I applied to State. I really didn't want to go there. Applied to Carolina, and I got in. So, I mean, eventually it was like the best choice. And I think just being so close, I didn't really realize Chapel Hill was so close to home from Burlington. Just go down 54. But back then I thought it was a little further than that. But just moving in, I lived in Granville Towers for about 2 weeks. So, with COVID hitting and, that college experience kind of ruined, I didn't want to go home. So I found an apartment after we got kicked out in Carborough, and I kind of stayed in Chapel Hill since. I haven't really been home since, but, just kind of on the weekends or whenever a big event happens. But now I'm just like the biggest Carolina fan. I think kind of reflecting on my time here at UNC, I think it's been the best choice of my life. I think just the lifelong friends I've met, the roommates I've had, I think it all kind of encompasses like what Carolina is about, like that friendship. And I think, and I did apply to Duke, so luckily I didn't get in, but I think without my affinity to Carolina, I think it was really the best choice, because I think my experience here as a first gen is really different from, the typical Carolina graduate. And, just kind of reflecting on my time, it really makes a big difference because, there's family here, there's Carolina here. And, I wouldn't change anything about that. And, yeah, so.
Thank you. Well, it sounds like we had a lot of similarities, a couple of differences with the electronics, but I'm curious to hear how this next question does, show some of the differences. So, Tim, maybe we'll start with you this time. How did you register for classes?
Well, it was, I think we filled out I don't really remember, except you signed up for classes, not virtually, like they do today. And if you got your courses, fine. If not, then you had to go to what was called drop ad. All the old folks up here know what drop ad was, which was in a woolen gym. And temperature in there, like Freddie said yesterday, was like 110. And you know, lines would go all the way back to the wall, and you might be vying for one seat, and you'd get up there and that class was full. So you would eventually have to go around the room amongst all the freshmen, because we had the least, what do you say?
Priority.
Yeah, yes, we were the last to get filled. So, other than the introductory courses, so that's what we did.
Wow.
Yeah, it was an exciting time.
As
Is
I
that-
reflect back, that's kind of hard, because I don't remember having to do the drop ad that often. It seems like I filled out what I need to take using what was required to get the units that you need to move on to the next level. And the fact that I had taken come to UNC during the summer and took some tests, I got some credits thanks to my high school and elementary grade tutoring or whatever, educational background, that I didn't have any problems getting into different subjects. I didn't do the drop ad. Did go to Wooden Gym, but it wasn't difficult. Plus I had friends that told me how to do what you need to do. You know, that made it much easier. Having friends that have gone through the system of getting classes helps you out a lot, and they kind of give you some clues as to this class, this professor.
I wonder so what did you major in?
At first, I was an accounting major, 5 years. Then my little sister came to Carolina, and my brother went to A&T, and it was time for me to go home and start working. So I changed my junior year to education and did my student teaching in the spring and went home and started teaching.
Okay.
So that's what happened.
Okay.
I was an accounting major, not that I was as good as my husband is with money. I was good.
Warren, how about you? How was your experience?
As I recall, we registered the first semester during the summer orientation, so that was fairly easy. And you could test out of certain course levels, which I was fortunate enough to do a couple. The other semesters went relatively smoothly. I was an English major, and you know, the people were not standing in line to get English courses, so that was good. but the other courses that you did have to kind of compete for, I distinctly remember being in Woolen, standing in line, and you'd get up trying to get into drama 15, and all of the cards are gone, and you'd have to move to something else and try to make a different choice to fill that requirement. It was messy during those days and annoying, frankly, because you'd spend all day trying to get a course. But you know, with my advisor, whom I remember quite well, his name was, he was a dean, Moran. He hooked me up all the time. So good.
That's nice.
English, 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 English. History, 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 history. So it worked for me.
And how about you?
I don't have much to add to that. I started out as was going to be a double math and computer science major, but it was interfering with my party life. So I changed to business, and I was often the only woman in the class.
Imagine.
And that worked out much better for me. Oh, and one other, I had a 4.0 in my freshman year, both semesters. But every semester after that, it went down, 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 down. But it is just as hard to pull down a 4.0 as it is to pull up a 2.0. So I finished with a 3.3.
Nice. And Susie, how about you?
Nobody had as much fun as Martha Ann. I'll tell you what. I do remember the hot days in line in Woolen Gym. I will tell you, I'm the kind of person who, when life takes you in a different direction from where you plan, will sit here and say, okay, why am I here? What am I supposed to see, do, know? And so the two classes I remember most at Carolina happened as a happy accident at drop ads. So I'll tell you when those come up. Unless you're ready for that question now. No, what?
You can go ahead.
Okay, the first one I'll tell you was somebody told me to take a botany class, which was an easy A. There were about 300 students in there.
In Coker Hall.
Okay. So I took the class, and we had to do a project that was plant-based as part of the class. And just so happened that there were a bunch of fraternity guys sitting together who were sitting near me, and they said, "Susie, come with us, we're gonna make beer." I said, "Oh, okay, let's do this." My daddy was a teetotaler too. So anyway, they were living together in this fraternity house. I never went in that fraternity house, but I would check with them every once in a while and make sure they were on track, because I wanted that easy A. About 3 days before it was due, they said, "Susie, we drank the beer last night." Oh my God. I don't remember what they did, but I called my grandmother, who was a vegetarian, and said, "Grandma, what's that recipe for the meatloaf with the ground pecans?" And she told me the recipe, and I made that meatloaf and took it to class, and he had me pass it around the class, and people took a sample if they wanted it. And I got an A. I don't know what they got. The other class that I took that I remember most is I needed a psych class. It was a requirement, and this particular class was at the right time. It was like 10 o'clock in the morning, middle of the week or something. And so it has turned out to be one of the most valuable classes I've ever had. It was on like group psychology, and how in every group there's like an alpha and whatever. And all this, while I was teaching, there was almost every class some fella who would sit in the back, cute as a button, who would flirt with me, and some girl on the front row who was very intelligent who would criticize that guy. And it was just about in every class that would happen. I don't know why, but I decided, yep, there's an order. People fit into different roles. I've been in situations where I didn't like where I was pushed, so I fought back. And I just want to say, because of drop ad and having that requirement and taking that class, it's made a difference. So,
Wow.
learned a lot.
Thank you. All right, so let's hear from our students. We'll start with Phil. What was your experience like registering for classes?
Yeah, well, I can't imagine waiting in line at a drop ad like the Carolina Duke game. But for me personally, I think my first semester, or I guess like coming into Carolina, I was a pre-med, so I wanted to kind of take all the bio, chemistry, physics early on, and I didn't get into chemistry, so I had to take it the second semester, and then I think that changed my trajectory a little bit from going to med school. So I kind of was a bio major coming in, and then kind of reflected what I really wanted to do, and I kind of wanted to go into policy making, so I wanted to kind of study in the School of Public Health. So I'm a health policy major now, and in that regard, you have to apply to the major your sophomore year, and then I guess after you get in, it's like a cohort of 45 people, pretty small class, and in that case, once you get into the major, all your classes are reserved for you, so you don't really have to kind of haggle with other people for your courses, because people who get in a major, they can only enroll in that class. And I think that kind of helped me with like getting my classes, but I think for freshman and sophomore year, I came in with a lot of credits from AP courses, so I didn't really have to take a lot of the gen eds, like foreign language or whatnot. But I mean, my LFIT, which is like the physical activity course, was on Zoom, so I think that was like kind of the difference because of COVID. Whereas people just do your exercise on Zoom in front of the professor, or like you would like kind of run like on your watch and then just like send a screenshot. But that's kind of how like the courses went on for the first and part of the second year with remote learning. But I think now just with the enrollment process, it's gotten easier, but also like the interface is very outdated. It seems like it's from like the late 90s, honestly. A lot of people dread it when they enroll because they don't get the courses they want. But they've kind of tweaked up a little bit of how people register. So like I think you get priority if you have the most credit hours, and it goes down to like the first years. I think that kind of helps people, but also some people come in with community college credits. So like if they're like a freshman with 60 credit hours from community college, they would register with the juniors and they would get that advantage over like first year students, which a lot of people hate, but I kind of understand that, and I think that's how it went. And there's wait lists, so you don't have to drop an ad, and there's also open enrollment period at the end where like there's like leftover classes, but usually those classes people don't really want for a reason. And we also have like a rate my professor kind of thing. I don't know if it was back then, but you kind of look up the professor's name on this website, and it kind of gives you the reviews from other students who took their courses in the past. And that's kind of how I dictated what courses I took, because if a professor had a low rating, I just kind of disregarded that class entirely. But it's mainly like the classes that are like big, like general chemistry, biology, that people hate, and then they just have like the worst ratings just because the exams are hard or there's a lot of work. But I think in some regards, like that's the only class that is taught by that professor, so you have to just suck it up or else just take it like at a community college or in the summer. But yeah.
Yeah, my process for registration was pretty similar. I took a lot of different classes in a lot of different areas because it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do. But I'm also the type of student that likes to plan out every single course I'm going to take for my 4 years. So I've made many spreadsheets that have different courses I plan to take. So when I ran into issues with registering with a course being full, I would utilize the wait list a lot. But I think one of the perks of being able to register online is that I can sort of just sit in my room at 1 in the morning and just go on and filter down by like a specific time. So like if I want a class from 2 to 3:15 on Tuesday, Thursday, I can just look exactly that up. And I've added a couple classes just doing that before and gotten into some interesting courses that way. So registration was pretty simple with it being online and everything, but the ability to filter things and utilize the internet and rate my professor, like Phil said, has been really, really helpful, and I'm very glad I never had to sit in the gym in the heat.
Yeah, I was a physics major for 2.5 years, so my registration process was easier than everybody's because everyone's dying to take a physics course. I think that hasn't changed. So, but I think the funny thing now is that most people, no matter what they're doing, whether they're in class, at work, it's like, hold up, let me grab my laptop, my my time slot's just coming up, and so it's just like you're sitting there 5 minutes beforehand, just ready to click your button. And it's just like, well, you got this course, didn't get this one, you're on the wait list for this one, and just kind of tells you all that right then and there. So it was like, my final semester, I was like, well, I need the 2 courses I need to graduate. I also want to take golf. So, of course I got the 2 classes I needed to graduate, but I didn't get golf. Sad. Oh, come on, Mary.
I took golf.
I was in golf. I feel like pretty similar to what everyone else has said, but 2 things I was thinking of. One, my outfit was also online, and I have this vivid memory of just sitting in my seat when he was telling us to do jumping jacks and just waving my arms like this in a Zoom camera. And then when we would do the planks, I would just angle my camera up and just lay on the ground for a bit so I didn't have to do the workout. But that was a fun class, though. And then with registration, so you go into the website, Connect Carolina, and you can add all the classes you want to a shopping cart. And like Andrew said, you get a certain time that you have to register. So I didn't realize that you could select classes from your shopping cart. So I would completely empty it for all but the 5 classes and then press enroll. Now this might not seem problematic to y'all, but if you don't get into the classes you had planned, you have about 4 seconds until the next one's filled up. So whenever I would not get into it, I would have to go back, search up the class again. So it felt very much like I was standing in Woolen Gym sweating because I didn't think I was going to get into any classes. Thankfully, junior year, 2 years later, I learned that you could just select the classes and then you didn't have to go and look them back up. But it ended up working out. I'm graduating, and I got into golf, so.
It all worked out. Well, thank you. All right, so this next question I'm excited about, and we'll go ahead and we'll start with the students on this one. So, Merritt, let's start with you. What is a football Saturday like for you?
Okay. I'm in a
The PG version.
Yeah, I'm in a sorority, so I will add that. So normally, let's say it's an 8 p.m. game, because no one likes the 12 o'clock games. You can't do anything before. So 8 p.m. game, you sleep in, you know, you go and you have brunch with your friends. Then we all go back to our house, and we would all get ready together and find, you know, my Carolina blue dress. Then at about 3 o'clock, you head over to frat court, and you just bebop around to all the different frats and whatever day party they're throwing. And then finally you make it to the stadium, where you have to wait in the long student line entry for, feels like forever, just for you to get into the game, and then them tell you the student section is full, so then you don't know where you're gonna sit. So then finally you find one spot that you can squeeze into in the metal bleachers, and then you stand there for 4 hours because you can't sit in the student section. And then finally at 12, the game ends. Hopefully, we won, and I just go straight to bed pretty much, because it's been a long day of standing and walking. But still, I'll miss them. I love the football games. I love going and cheering on the heels, and they've been a great memory.
My Saturdays look a little bit different. Me and my roommates are all just big sports guys in general, so, and all of our parents went to different places, so we're just kind of up, early to watch game day, and then, once noon kickoffs happen, we're all watching those games, and then, we'll figure out when we need to leave for UNC, but, I think for the most part, we're just having a good old time, making sure we hydrate before all the football games. But then, walk through, my apartment is on MLK, so, we walk through Polk, walk through middle of campus, see all the little tailgates going on. If I have some friends, having one, maybe stop there. And then, just go into the game and have a real good time. So we tend to try and get closer to the front section. So we go to most sporting events anyway, so we're always used to being there super early. That's my typical Saturday.
My typical Saturday is pretty similar to Andrew, except I didn't like to get there super early. I just did not enjoy sitting for hours before, but I would do it occasionally. But mostly my friends and I would just meet up. We would usually get brunch or something in the dining hall. And then we'd all sort of walk over whenever the game started. We'd get there about 30 to 45 minutes early, because we found out that you can sit in the little corner part of the student section at the very front. I feel like people don't really decide to sit there until right before kickoff for some reason. So we would show up about then and usually sit in the front row right beside the live version of Ramsey's, which is always really fun to see people come get pictures with them and everything. And yeah, we'd have great seats. We'd sit there, we'd watch the whole game. I would occasionally explain to people in my friend group what was happening. They weren't huge football fans sometimes. And then usually by the end, we were either very frustrated or very excited. And then if it was an early game, we would probably get dinner afterwards sometimes, but the night games, kind of like Merritt said, it was a long day, so just go to bed right after.
I think looking at football games in Chapel Hill, it's like a national holiday. It's kind of lighting up. Everything is, lively. And typically whenever I go to football games, considering if I get a ticket or not, I usually just kind of wake up a little early, around 9 a.m., and then kind of get ready with my roommates. And typically if it's a noon game, we'd probably just head out to the bars early around 10. He's not here, so that's kind of the typical bar that we go to. So when they open, kind of hang out there for a little bit, and then considering whenever we get to the stadium, so we kind of just walk down Columbia and Cameron to get to the stadium. I prefer early games just because if it's a 6 p.m. game, it typically ends around 11 p.m., so it's kind of not ideal, considering, people actually do want to go out afterwards as well. As a senior, I kind of dread going out after games because I feel old now. But I think my sophomore and junior year, I think I had more energy. But I think there's a phase of like your undergrad where like you're more inclined to go out more in your early years. But then just now I'm just like tired. I feel like, but football games are pretty long, so it's like 4 or 5 hours of just standing there. And it also depends on what team we're playing. So if it's Duke game, I'm like hyped up, but if it's like Virginia, I'm just kind of indifferent about the game. But I think overall, a game day is like, I prefer basketball over football, but football games, there's that excitement. There's like the crowd. It's always filled with and Keenan. And it's also hard to get a seat as well. So I think that kind of dreads me going sometimes because, some of my friends get tickets, but then I don't, or like vice versa. So we just sometimes just watch it at home, just so everyone can enjoy it. And I typically host like, game day parties whenever that happens. But it also depends on the game. So if it's a Duke game, yes. State game, probably. But that's just kind of how my weekend goes.
Thanks, Phil. I agree. I think 3 p.m. is the sweet spot for games. And one question, if you could clarify, or one of the students could clarify. So you cannot go to every single football game. You have to. It's a lottery.
I mean, if you get lucky, you could, but typically people don't get as lucky to get to all the football games.
Well, we have like a reward system, so it's called Fever, and you go to all these different games, and you get points on your account. They make sure you sign in the beginning, sign out at the end. If you're in the top 200 pointers, you're guaranteed not only football tickets for that season, not only basketball tickets for that season, but even that coveted Duke ticket. And no, we don't have to camp out for it anymore, too. So they made it to where you're the first 200 through the door, too. So me and my roommates have been like front row for both of these, or for both the past 2 years.
Yeah, and the lottery is a little tough sometimes. I have friends that are seniors now that only got 1 ticket to football games this year. To basketball, myself and my girlfriend applied because you get 2 tickets if you get the basketball lottery. I think we ended up collectively getting 1 ticket to all the basketball games this year. So the lottery system is a little hit or miss, but yeah, you do not get guaranteed entry to all football and basketball games.
Got it. Thank you. All right, let's hear from our alumni. Tim, how about you? What was a typical football Saturday for you like?
Well, back in the dark ages, you just showed up at the gates, and the lines would be long, and you would just process through. And a little something different that I think they don't do now, people would carry in coolers stocked with their favorite beverage, and that sort of went away. And there was a lot of drinking and socializing going on in the stands, not by me personally, but by all my roommates and classmates. And so, you just started the march across campus to that gate, and then you went in and found your seat, and that's pretty much what we did. Does that gel with what you said?
Well, what I'm thinking, as far as going to the games on Saturdays or going to a basketball game, I really didn't have a problem with that if I wanted to go to them. I would go to a friend that was either on the team or that knew somebody that was in the band, and I'd get in for those games. I was there that famous game, the 8-17 thing, and I told everybody, I said, I'm not going through this crowd. Let's wait. That was the one game that I really remember. But basically, I lived in Hinton James, and Hinton James in the 70s was a party dorm. In fact, it was a co-ed, the 10th floor and the 8th floor were co-ed dorms. That's why I can't, Spencer got you in. Yeah. They called themselves locking us in, but it did not work. Did it, Mickey? No. We were able to, if you were there, you were supposed to leave at 12. They did not all the time. So therefore, you got locked in that way. But anyway, Hinton James was a party school. They had parties. My group of friends, we had a party downstairs in Hinton James where the paint was always wet from partying. So I think I was recuperating from that partying the night before. Not that I was out there jamming, but it was so hot in there inside. That was my typical Saturday.
That was your,
regrouping.
got it. All right. Warren, what was your typical football Saturday like?
As I recall, people typically dressed up to go to the football
Yes.
games when
Yes.
I was here, and yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh,
Coat and
wow.
tie and usually too many clothes because it could
Yeah.
get hot out
Hot.
there. And what I remember most was walking in through the gates to get in, and we were playing North Carolina State, and all you could see over there were these red jackets, and I thought, oh great, this is just gonna work real well for me. But it was a fun day. I was not a drinker. Neither were the folks that I hung around with mostly those days anyway. And Ida's right. James was the party house downstairs in the lounge, or even in the floor lounges on the other, and people would get locked in deliberately on either side. So when they unlocked them at 6 o'clock in the morning, also the men were going back to their side, and the women were going back to their side, or it was interesting. So, but fun, good fun.
That changing beds reminds me of having hidden in a closet at Airing House where the football players lived during bed check. That was only one time.
But Martha, and I'm curious to hear about your Saturdays.
Well, I'm big football, always have been. My father started taking me to those games when I was 8 years old, and I'm still a huge Carolina football fan. But I remember, like Warren said, that, you know, there was this pressure to dress up, and there was this pressure to have dates. And, you know, that was awful. And sometimes, I guess, when I didn't have a date, I would go with my father still to the game. But I like the trolling system now much better, because since my boys were finished in 15 and 16, they were betas. And so I got to tailgate in the beta front lawn. And we'd see the girls troll in. They'd travel in packs like you, 8, 10, in those cute Carolina dresses. And they didn't have to have a date. They went and drank at all the fraternity houses. And when they finished with the betas, they went to the Digs and then to the Fidels and slowly made their way. It was the way to go. But all of our football games started at 1:30, which was nice, because now you can't plan your day until they finally announce on Monday morning what time the football game's going to start. You know, and we were allowed to drink, I think, when we were in school at the games. And then there came, you know, periods where you couldn't before they were selling the alcohol. Anyway, my best friend is in the audience here, and we were tailgating and going into the football game, maybe 10 years ago, 8 years ago. And he said, Martha, you got to get rid of that drink before we go in. And I said, no, I don't have to get rid of that drink. And Daniel said, yeah, you got to get rid of that drink, Martha, and they're not going to let you in. And I said, you want to make a bet on that? And so we had a little wager, and I took my bourbon and ginger, and I walked in like this, hold it up, not even hiding it. I won the bet, and I looked at Daniel and I said, they don't check 65-year-old women.
They'll start now.
No, I still do it. It's my personal challenge to make sure I can still get a drink in there.
That is amazing. Thank you. Susie. Oh.
You know, I hate to say that I didn't go to a couple or 3 football games. Well, first of all, I transferred in as a junior, and so here, my junior and the first semester of my senior year, my second semester of my senior year, I lived at State on campus. I was working in the legislature. For them.
Did you also dress up when you went to the football games?
Yes.
Yes. The ladies wore heels, and they even had suits on, you know,
Yeah.
just like Jackie Kennedy.
Yeah.
And the guys wore jackets and
Yeah.
ties and everything. Did you know that young ones?
Yeah.
I don't know today, you guys, I'm class of 67.
Well, I was dating somebody from out of town, so I didn't have a date. But I knew the guys from the dorm, so I did go a couple times. Now, since I've graduated, I've gone to a bunch of games. I mean, we get season tickets every year, so, anyway, I love football too. But Martha Ann had the most fun.
I do believe that. All right, so we're going to move on to our next question. But before we do, I have to ask, Martha Ann, can you expand on getting locked in Spencer? I don't think I quite understand.
Okay, well, it wasn't really that severe, but you had to be in by 12 o'clock. And if you weren't in and you came later and called to try to get in, you got all kinds of demerits or in trouble. So what you needed to do was you had the opportunity to take a form home to your parents. And if your parents would sign it, then you got unlimited hours. And this was really easy because all you had to do was take the form home and say, well, you know, Dad, if I'm 10 minutes late, I'm going to get in trouble if I come in, so I'm going to be forced to spend the whole night out. But if you'll sign this form, when I'm 10 minutes late, I'll get in the dorm and get to my bed. And they quickly signed it. So.
And that was second semester. First semester, we didn't have self-limiting.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right, Kate.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, thank you for sharing. Stick with Martha and you'll be okay.
You got a sticker on your ID card. That's what the security guards would look at. If you didn't have a sticker, you didn't get in.
But they did bad check for the football players, you know, because they were supposed to be getting their proper rest, you know, for practices.
Mm-hmm. Wow. All right.
There's probably somebody else in this room that hid in a closet.
We won't ask for a raise of hands. All right. So we're going to start over here with you, Tim. Where on campus or just in Chapel Hill did you like to eat the most?
Well, I think if we were going, I would eat a lot of my meals at Granville. They had a cafeteria in between all the three dorms. But after a while, that became, tired. So a place called Zoom Zoom, which was on what's that street? Rosemary? Franklin. So it was called Zoom Zoom, and their specialty was everybody from that era will know, they brought some kind of meat. I'm not sure what it was, mystery meat or what, but they brought it out on a sizzling iron skillet.
Strip steak.
Strip steak, that's what they glamorized it as. And of course it was piled in a lot of grease and so forth, and usually with a side of fries and, tea, and it was a very reasonable meal. So I would say Zoom Zoom, and the Porthole, which has the best rolls in town.
Nice. What about you? Where was your favorite restaurant, either on campus or in Chapel Hill?
On campus, I guess it was my room. Because, we were allowed to have a hot plate. And we were able to cook meals. You could learn how to cook a meal on a hot plate.
Oh.
Pork chop and everything. So, and I didn't have money to go to the restaurants.
Yeah.
But I did work at Shoney's for a while. But no, I didn't have a favorite restaurant on Franklin Street. My room, my dorm room,
Did you cook most of your meals in?
or either whatever,
Yeah.
sardines or whatever. was
Yeah,
available,
yeah. Okay.
But it was an occasion to cook a good meal,
I don't think those hot plates are allowed anymore.
Not anymore. I don't, we had.
Yeah. Okay. There's an electronic there that the kids don't get to have.
What the?
The hot plate. Warren, what about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of a finicky eater, so there are lots of places that I didn't like the Pine Room. I hated it. But I guess my real favorite was the Carolina Coffee Shop.
Oh, that's still good.
They probably had the best beef stroganoff I've ever had. I've never found anything to match it since then, and they served it with steamed broccoli, which was a wonderful, wonderful meal for me. We also went to the Rathskeller, you kind of find your way back under this cavern. That was good. You know, if it was a late night after Hector's open, we would kind of pile in down there. A little of this, a little of that, but just don't throw me in the pine room.
Thank you. Marthan, how
I
about you?
love the Rathskeller. I like the Zoom Zoom also. But the Rathskeller had that same greasy steak, and they called it the single gambler. But if you were really hungry, some of the guys would have the double gambler. But they also had great beef stroganoff, and I would die for that beef stroganoff today.
What I remember about the Rathskeller, though, was that they had a dish called Hungarian goulash that was really good. Very filling, too. A little bit too spicy, but we ate it anyway. It was cheap.
Well, after transferring in from a school that was very protected, we had to wear dresses to the cafeteria at East College. So this is really something for me. And I panicked. I mean, I really did. There was some little snack bar. My second year I lived in Whitehead. So there was a snack bar over there on Columbia Street. I don't think it's not there anymore. But I'd either go in there or the snack bar in the Aaron House was there.
Scuttlebutt.
Scuttlebutt, okay.
Mhm.
And I'd have nabs or packaged sandwiches or that kind of thing. And I was going, I cannot keep eating like this. So I decided, some of my friends were 80 pies, and they had a great cook. So I pledged 80 pies. And I started going over there for lunches. My teetotaling daddy said, that's fine, you're just not going to live in that house. And the next year, when all these girls had to do student teaching, they said, you got to live here. So I said, oh, I got to choose between you and my daddy. So I didn't get to stay there, but I did pledge to get in. Was there a little while, and that's where I ate my junior year.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I was gonna say, I think you kind of took it from me. I think my favorite place is also my sorority house. We have a chef, and he was the personal chef for Robin Williams for many years. And yeah, he's very, very good, very good. So I don't think you can get much better than that. But then for like a late night spot, I love iHeart New York City Pizza. It's right on the corner by the yogurt pump, and he's not here, if y'all are familiar. But they'll get you a nice big slice at 1 a.m. and I would recommend that place.
Thank you. Andrew.
I think my favorite place to go is still Sutton's. Just nothing to beat a good burger and fries. It's also my girlfriend's favorite place, so I'm obligated to say that. But yeah, no, that's just one thing. Their quality never changes, at least in the time I've been here. So.
I lived in Granville for most of my time at Carolina, so sort of like Tim mentioned, I ate at their dining hall. I think, at least now, I think the Granville dining hall is known as sort of like the best dining hall on campus, and they have a lot of options, but I've been there for 3 years, so I've gotten a little tired of it. So my other sort of favorite spot in Chapel Hill is not on Franklin Street. It's a little closer towards Durham, but it's called Mr. Tokyo. It's like an all-you-can-eat sushi place. So I'll go there as often as I can, wait the hour to 2 hour wait, whatever it takes to get in. But I'm able to eat enough there at 1 o'clock in the afternoon that I don't really get hungry until the next day. So that's probably my favorite place in Chapel Hill.
I think one of the main differences between Franklin Street back then and now is like most of it now is like franchises. So a lot of them just kind of came to Chapel Hill, like McDonald's, all that. But I think personally, my favorite is probably the Mediterranean Deli. So I think the one that kind of burned down last year. But I think they're restructuring it hopefully by fall semester whenever people come back. But typically, I didn't get to experience any dining hall because I was in Granville for 2 weeks and then we got kicked out, so I really didn't get a meal plan since. But typically, whenever I go out, I kind of either just go to Chipotle or go to Cava, which is like a Mediterranean style Chipotle where you pick your own bowl, you pick your own protein, vegetables, all that. So I kind of like that Mediterranean diet. That's kind of my favorite in Chapel Hill. I don't really go to Lenore as often, maybe bottom Lenore where they have like Chick-fil-A, and I just typically just get something and grab and go. But yeah.
Thank you. And I'm
I
gonna,
have to add
oh,
one thing,
yes.
Mary, your late night, Roy Rogers cheeseburgers. Oh, my God.
Anyone else with their late night spot?
Golden West.
I could throw out another, Cosmic Cantina. They just had a grand reopening too, new location on Franklin Street. So,
It's the cheapest Mexican food you can get in the middle of the night.
Is it good, too?
yeah,
I think it's
is.
great.
Okay,
I would make it during the daytime too.
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to ask one more question, and then I would really love to open it up to our audience to see what you all want to ask the panelists. So with this last question, be thinking of what you want to ask. So for our panelists, and we'll start with our students, Phil, if you want to start us, who or what was your favorite professor or class and why?
That's a long question. Let me see.
You can either pick your favorite class or your favorite professor.
I think my favorite classes has definitely been in my major, so the health policy management major. You kind of learn a lot about policy, global health, and how the world connects to each other, like social determinants of health, and that kind of encompasses where you grow up, where you live, and how that affects your upbringing in terms of academia or the quality of life that you have. And being from a semi-rural county of Alamance County, you kind of experience the different parts of North Carolina where there are people who are underserved in their community. And I'm going to be a college advisor for Reedsville High School after graduating. So I think my goal is to try to help folks go to college, and it kind of brightens the privilege that we have to go to a four-year institution and a university that is served for the people of North Carolina. And I kind of want to help kind of give back to my North Carolina community. Being born and raised here, I have I feel like I have an obligation to help people in the state and also the state that we're in. There's a lot of changes happening. Like I kind of focus on Medicaid and Medicare expansion in my major, so just kind of being the advocate. And I think being at UNC has kind of helped me critically think about the people around us and things that we don't really kind of think about on a daily basis. And I think mainly is I kind of want to help people, and I think I'm planning to go to law school afterwards. So I think the advocate part is like where I've kind of gained coming to Carolina, and just being from like underserved high school. I think the opportunities that we've had here with the professors that we've had kind of give us that privilege to kind of give back and have that knowledge and skill set leaving Carolina.
So my favorite professor, I've had a class with him each of the last 3 semesters. He's probably one of the only professors that actually would know my name. But his name is Dr. Mario. He's a statistics professor at UNC. And he's sort of like a more polarizing professor. I think a lot of people find his classes difficult, and his teaching style can be interesting, but he is my absolute favorite teacher, and primarily because he is one of the only professors I've had that makes all the classes focused on like your career outside of Chapel Hill. I think a lot of professors like want you to learn as much as possible, of course, but I've had like what almost seems to be like tests for the sake of taking tests. But with all of his courses, he's taught me so many like important things with how to excel like in the future in my job. So like I want to go into sports analytics, like doing statistics for a sports team. And I'm taking a sports analytics course with him right now. And we've done some really like cool projects where we like predict the scores of professional basketball games. We look at like college football scores and things like that. He's helped me make a website for myself. So I think having a professor like him has been really helpful for me. And it's really cool to find professors like that that really care specifically like about you as students, like both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And he's always like quick to check up with me like, after class, always go say hi and everything. But yeah, I think it was cool to find a professor like him, and he's definitely my favorite professor and has taught my favorite class at UNC, which would be sports analytics.
I think my favorite class was my public policy capstone, which, did y'all have capstones, or is that a newer thing? What was that? Okay. Basically, the capstone, it'll be your final course generally in your major. And so kind of combining all the things you've learned over the past 4 years. And the way my public policy capstone worked is we ended up pairing up into different teams, about 4 or 5 people, and we worked with a local nonprofit. And so it was kind of getting, actual work experience in a sense, and, research experience in that. But my group and I ended up being partnered with the Southern Environmental Law Center, which was very nice just because it's kind of what I was planning on wanting to do with life, and so it was nice to solidify that in a sense. But overall, it's very, on your own. You don't have too much guidance unless you need it, and so. But my professor, who was our advisor in this, he was very hands-off, which I really love. His name was Jeff Summerlin Long. And he's leaving in the fall or after this semester, so I was very sad about that. But he's the nicest fella I've ever met, and he remembers my name too, which is always nice. But yeah, no, it was like my first kind of research project that I got to present to and have something to take home and show mom. So.
I think something I'm pretty fortunate with being in the business school is the classes are really small. It's a major you have to apply to, so I don't think I've been in a class larger than 35 since sophomore year. But my favorite professor, his name was C.J. Skinder. He just retired last spring, but he had taught UNC for over 30 years. And he taught me intro to accounting and then also financial accounting. And I think through that class is where I really figured out what I wanted to do and the career I wanted to pursue afterwards. And he was a great balance of just, giving you rigorous academics, but also ensuring that he was flexible and always there to, help out with anything that you needed. And so I just think overall he was a really good professor to have from freshman year all the way through junior year.
Thank you. And
I don't remember the name of the professors that I had, but I was a political science major, and it was such an exciting time to be in that major. Watergate trials were going on, and our Senator Sam Erwin was leading the Watergate trials. Rufus Edmondson, who became Secretary of State here in North Carolina eventually, was his assistant or his aide. And so a bunch of us would go to Washington and get to know some of those folks up there and really enjoyed watching the trials. In the meantime, in the background, there's the Vietnam War going on. Nixon's in trouble. He resigns that year from his office as president. Spiro Agnew, his vice president, had voluntarily left when he got in trouble with tax evasion. There was just a whole lot going on.
yeah.
And so, although I was out there exploring, taking a lot of fun classes. I loved my English class. A lot of great books, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. If you haven't read it, read it.
Thank you, Susie. Martha Ann, how about you?
Well, just let me first say that it's just changed so much because we didn't have to apply to the individual schools. If you got in Carolina, you could major in anything you wanted to. So our business school classes were huge, huge. I mean, more people often than the seats in this room. Benavie, who taught intro to econ, I thought he was excellent. And my favorite teacher, though, was a guy named Roby Clark, and UNC, in their wisdom, fired him the next year. I never knew why, but he taught tax, and that was one of the more difficult courses in the business school. And you had to sit in the same seat every time because he wanted to know whether you were in class or not. And let me tell you, if you missed one, you were the subject of the stand-up comedy routine for the 15 minutes of the next day's class. Maybe that's why they fired him. But boy, after that first 15 minutes was over, you better have your pen out, and it was go, 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 go. And he taught that tax like I can't imagine anybody else could do it. They fired him.
Yeah. And Warren, how about you?
I was just thinking of all the classes and professors that I had, and I don't know that any one necessarily stood out. But in history, there were Professors Baxter and Soloway, and in English, there were Professors Mills and McNamara, and in Southern Studies, there was Professor Joel Williamson, and in African American Studies, Professor Jim Brewer, who was not a Carolina faculty member, but was a full professor over at North Carolina Central that they brought in to teach those kinds of classes. Every one of those professors had a profound effect on me. They challenged you to read broadly and deeply, and to think critically, and to write precisely, and to speak your mind. And I kind of wanted to be just like they were in the congregate. So I went all the way through Carolina, and I did not have a woman professor at all.
Oh, no.
Not a single one.
Wow.
That's a sad statement to
Yeah.
make, but it was the truth.
Well, luckily things have changed a little on that
Thank
front.
goodness.
Awesome. All right, Ida.
As Susie said, I cannot remember the names of my professors because most of my classes, the first 3 years were accounting, business classes. So when I switched over into education, I had a purpose. Graduate in the spring of '74 instead of '75. Thus, I did not become close to any of those teachers. I took the class, did the work, did collaborative work with students, whatever was necessary for me to maintain so that I would be graduating in '74, the spring. And that's what I did. I appreciated being in Peabody. I appreciated the educational instructors because they prepared me to be a teacher, an educator. I love it. I love it. I love the projects. I love explaining. I love getting kids to learn. And that's what I learned from the education department. But a name, I had a purpose. Get out of here.
Graduate,
Yeah,
yes.
graduate.
All time.
I think some of the students can relate to that.
I had two professors, really, that I can remember their names. One was Joel Carter, who was a voice teacher in the music department, and I took voice lessons from him, and he recruited me to join his choir at the Presbyterian church across the street there. Really, I took probably 8 music appreciation courses because they were kind of a good B or a good A opportunity and to bump your GPA. But the most entertaining professor that I have that I can remember his name was Gerald Unks.
Oh, yeah.
Ed 41. And he was a favorite among all of the athletes at Chapel Hill because he loved the athletes, but he also was purported to be an easy A. So, to get that GPA up. But he had an entertaining style of teaching in that a lot of professors would, stand in front of a podium, read from voluminous notes, and, you really couldn't, you were furiously writing down key points. But Gerald had this ability to dramatize his topic of the day. And he would assume a character and speak to you through that character. Meanwhile, you're wrapped. He was a fabulous orator. And he would just teach you things about the educational system and the disparities in education based on race, color, sex, whatever. He also led a group of us I took a trip with him, the first trip out of the country, to Russia. He took 250 of us back in '74 over the Christmas holidays, which my mother never forgave me because I was not home at Christmas that year. But that was when it was the USSR, and that was a very eye-opening experience. So Gerald Unks was the most favorite professor that I had.
He was funny too.
He was
really
hysterical.
Really
He would always, and he had this thing like you would put a question in a box, and he would draw from the students, he would draw the question out, and he'd say, what is your favorite topic, or something like that. So he would expound on whatever question he drew out of the box. And so that's the way he started every class.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you for sharing. I know we're close on time, but I did want to make sure I let folks ask a question. We might just let one student and one alumni answer, but I saw a hand up here.
This one's really for the students, and it's kind of based on what Ida said, that she had a purpose, she needed to graduate on time. How the heck can you do a double major without adding years? Because when we were in school, the extra credits would have required you to be on the 5 or 6 year plan. I mean, my master's degree wound up being a double, and it added an extra year automatically.
I think a lot of that just comes with advanced placement classes you can take in high school. So if you get enough of those, like high enough scores to get the AP credit, then you can apply those to your general education requirements at UNC. So like Phil said, he didn't have to take any languages, and I didn't either, and that's 3 classes that you normally have to take of language. So if you place out of that, there's 9 credits that you could fill with something else. And also, some of the majors are quite small. Some of them don't, like I know one of my friends is in some kind of studies, and it's only like a 20 credit hour major. So it's not as extensive as, maybe like business or physics or biology, maybe. I don't know.
My public policy major, it's just like 30 credit hours, so a year's worth of credit, but also it covered a lot of my gen eds too. So I was able to kind of swap those in.
Yeah, I think you can double dip, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that helps.
The question on the accounting major, do you get enough hours in for the exam, the 150 hours to sit for the CPA exam? See, I had to go an extra whole year.
No, so since you would be likely to have the correct amount of hours, but you wouldn't have the correct classes. So like with the CPA exam, I know you have to have taken certain levels of accounting, but at UNC, because they don't have an accounting major, it's just general business major now. They only offer intro to accounting, financial accounting, and then there's one other, I want to say it might be like tax law or something like that. So you would still need to get the Masters of Accounting to have the correct classes.
Yes.
This is for Martha Ann. You've been to so many Carolina sporting events since you graduated from Carolina. What's your most exciting day you ever had at a sporting event after you finished?
I don't know. They were probably more football related. I wasn't at the basketball game when Luke May hit the buzzer shot against Kentucky that led to a national championship. Being in the Kenan Stadium when Gio Bernardi, what was his last name? Bernard, when he took that punt return and passed all those NC State players and scored the touchdown that put us ahead. That was a great one. Gosh, I was with my son at a game more recently, but still maybe about 3 years ago when I think we beat Duke at the 3-yard line. That was another biggie.
Wow, that's special. Okay, last question. Oh, we have 2. We'll hit them both real quick.
Those of us who didn't go to graduate school, a number of recruiters came on campus, I think Phillips Hall. It wasn't a question if you want to get a job, but who are you going to work for? That was a wonderful, wonderful service. I was curious if that's still offered. My classmates remember those days.
I don't think it's offered, at least for the business school, it's not offered in the same capacity where you're going, to this big room and they're looking to directly hire from there. It's more, at least in the business perspective, about networking and making those relationships with the recruiters to then apply later on. But I think Kenan Flagler does a really good job of fostering those relationships. I know that I'm going into consulting after graduation, and so they had a whole consulting firm trek where 15 consulting firms came and sent representatives And we got to go around and spend about 30 to 45 minutes talking to each one and learning about them. I don't know if the other majors do it differently.
I mean, I think in terms of just UNC graduates, I feel like this market now, in terms of job hiring, there really isn't any direct hires without the connections that you make with networking. I've actually never heard of like the whole situation with the Phillips Hall direct recruitment, but I think in general, I think for now, with a lot of Carolina alumni and graduates, it's hard to kind of have that direct hire. So I think the main thing is making connections in your undergrad with professors, with people that can connect you to other people outside of UNC, and to get those hires. And that kind of goes with like letter of recommendations, and that goes with, kind of if you're doing research, having that connection to other people outside of UNC. But in terms of direct hire, I don't think that's a thing anymore, from my knowledge. But I think just the market right now is kind of rough depending on what you're going into in terms of consulting or business management or just like kind of grad school. So I think that's a little bit different from how it used to be.
There's the career services.
Yeah, there's career services. It's in Haynes Hall, but I feel like it's very underutilized right now, especially people who just don't really know how to approach it or like don't really know how to ask for help. But they try to promote themselves to help, but it's just kind of on the students to kind of ask for that help, because with 30,000 students on UNC's campus, it's really hard to kind of make connections to everyone here, and with everyone's different interests, it's kind of hard to connect you to different people if you don't really tell people that you need help.
Yeah. Career fairs are even like online and virtual now too.
Oh,
Yeah.
my.
All right, our last question.
My question is, do you still have Saturday classes?
Actually, in the business school, they do have weekend classes every now and then. So you would go, and it's 9 to 5, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But that's only about 3 weekends each semester, and you can opt into those or opt out. I've personally chosen to opt out, but
As I imagine a lot of students have.
yeah.
Well,
8 o'clock and 11 o'clock.
Oh,
Saturday class, both semesters when I was a freshman.
oh gosh.
It's hard to get a football.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is tough. I think those normal ones are gone.
We had all graduated pharmacy school, we had recruiters came in, and some of us didn't get offered jobs because we had low draft numbers.
Oh, wow, that is unique. Wow. Well,
I know.
yes, go ahead.
I just gotta say, ripping off what Warren said, there was a black female professor during 1971 to 74. Her name was Dr. Bernadette Gray Little, and I sought her out for that reason.
Oh, wow. That's,
She was a provost, yeah.
yeah. Thank you for sharing. Absolutely. Well, and thank you all for being here. Thank you to our panelists and our students. A big round of applause. Just a reminder that the next enrichment session starts at 1 p.m. in this room. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your weekend.